Okay, I need you to really listen to me right now. Not like halfway listen while you're scrolling through something else. Actually, stop. Put your phone down for a second. Or if you're watching this on your phone, just be here with me, just for a little while. Because what I'm about to tell you, it might be the most important thing you hear today. Maybe this week. Maybe, and I don't say this lightly, maybe in a really, really long time. I want to tell you about a conversation I had with my friend. Let's call her Maya. Maya is one of those people who, from the outside, looks like she's absolutely got it together. Good job, nice apartment, always smiling. But one evening, we were just sitting on her kitchen floor. Don't ask me how we ended up on the floor. We just did. You know how those conversations go. And she said something that stopped me cold. She said, I don't actually know if my parents ever liked me. Like, not loved, liked, as a person. And the room just went quiet. Because I didn't know what to say. And she wasn't crying. That was the thing that got me. She wasn't crying. She was just stating it. Like it was a fact she'd accepted so long ago that it didn't even hurt anymore. Like she just built her entire life on top of that fact and kept going.
And I thought about that conversation for weeks. Weeks! Because here's the thing. Maya is not alone. Not even close. There are millions of people walking around right now, going to work, making dinner, laughing at things online, who are carrying something they've never fully named. Something that started before they even had the words for it. Something that happened when they were small, when they were completely dependent on the people who were supposed to love them most. And the scary part? Most of them don't even know they're carrying it. They just think, this is who I am. This is how life is. This is normal. But it's not normal. And it was never your fault. So today, I want to talk to you about 7 signs that you might have been an unloved child. Not unloved in the dramatic, movie kind of way that we imagine, but unloved in the quiet, subtle, soul-level kind of way that leaves marks you can't always see, but you always feel. And then, and this is the part I really want us to get to, I want to talk about how you actually start to heal. Because you can. I promise you, you genuinely can. All right, let's go.
Sign number 1. You apologize for everything. And I mean everything. You bump into a chair, you say sorry. Someone interrupts you, you apologize for talking. You ask for help, you spend 5 minutes explaining why you hate to ask before you even get to the actual asking. Sound familiar? Here's a story. There's a guy, real person, I'm just changing the name. Let's call him Daniel. Daniel was in his 30s when his therapist pointed something out to him. She said, Daniel, you've apologized 4 times in the last 20 minutes. You apologized for being 5 minutes late. You apologized for not knowing the answer to something. You apologized for wasting my time when you asked me to repeat something. And you apologized for apologizing. And Daniel laughed because he'd never noticed. He genuinely had never noticed that he did that constantly, every single day. Daniel grew up in a house where his emotions were an inconvenience. When he cried, he was told he was being dramatic. When he was excited, he was told to calm down. When he needed something, he was made to feel like he was asking for too much. So little Daniel learned something very quickly. He learned that existing, just being himself, needing things, feeling things, made the people around him uncomfortable. And uncomfortable people become cold or angry or disappearing. So he started shrinking. He started pre-apologizing for taking up space. And 30 years later, he's still doing it.
There's actually research on this. A study published in the journal Developmental Psychology found that children who receive inconsistent or emotionally unavailable caregiving develop what's called an anxious attachment style. And one of the core features of anxious attachment is hypervigilance, constantly scanning the environment for signs that you're too much, that you've done something wrong, that you need to make yourself smaller to keep the peace. The constant apologizing, that's not politeness. That's survival behavior that followed you into adulthood. Your nervous system learned that apologizing was how you stayed safe, and your nervous system is still running that same program, even now, even when there's no danger.
Sign number 2. You have absolutely no idea what you actually want. And not in the fun, free-spirited kind of way, in the deeply unsettling kind of way. Someone asks you where you want to go for dinner, and you feel a kind of low-level panic. Not because you're being polite, but because you genuinely don't know. You've spent so long prioritizing what everyone else wants that your own preferences feel like a foreign language. I know a woman. Let's call her Sarah. Sarah is 41 years old. She figured out last year that she'd been decorating her home based on what she thought other people would like when they visited. Every single piece of furniture, every color on the wall, all chosen based on an imaginary audience. She had never once asked herself, but do I like this? Is this what I want my home to feel like? When she realized that, she sat with it for a really long time. Because it wasn't just about furniture. It was about everything. Her job, her relationships, the way she spent her weekends. Almost none of it had been chosen based on what she actually wanted. She'd been living her life for an audience that wasn't even there.
This happens when parents, even parents who might have meant well, consistently override their child's preferences. You don't really want that. You shouldn't feel that way. Stop being so picky. Just be grateful. Over and over again, the child's inner world is dismissed or corrected until they stop consulting it. They stop asking themselves what they want because experience has taught them that it doesn't matter. Or worse, that wanting the wrong thing will cause problems. Psychologists call this the suppression of the authentic self. And here's what's fascinating and a little heartbreaking about it. A 2019 study from the University of California found that people who grew up in emotionally dismissive environments showed significantly reduced activity in the brain regions associated with self-referential processing. In other words, the part of their brain that thinks about themselves, their own desires, needs, feelings, was literally less active because they'd been conditioned to stop using it. You weren't born without preferences. They were just taught out of you. Sign number 3. You are terrified of conflict. Like genuinely terrified. Not just uncomfortable with it, terrified. And I want to be specific here because I think this one gets misunderstood. I'm not talking about people who are naturally calm and non-confrontational. That's a personality trait, and it's completely fine. I'm talking about the people who will let someone treat them badly, repeatedly, consistently, obviously badly, and say nothing. Not because they don't notice, not because they don't care, but because the thought of saying something feels physically dangerous. Like something catastrophic will happen if they speak up. Let me tell you about a guy named Ravi. Ravi had a coworker who was genuinely making his life miserable, taking credit for his work, talking over him in meetings, making little digs in front of other people. And Ravi's friends kept saying, just say something, just tell him to stop. But Ravi couldn't. Every time he thought about it, his heart would race, his hands would sweat, his mind would go blank. He'd rehearse what he wanted to say 100 times, and then the moment would come, and he'd smile and say nothing, and then feel terrible about it for days.
Here's what Ravi eventually figured out in therapy. Growing up, conflict in his house meant someone getting screamed at, or someone going completely silent for days. That cold, icy silence that's somehow worse than yelling. Conflict meant that love could be withdrawn. Conflict meant that the person who was supposed to keep him safe might suddenly become the source of danger. So little Ravi learned Never, ever rock the boat. Keep the peace at any cost, because the cost of conflict is always higher than the cost of silence. The problem is, that was then, and this is now. And the cost of constant silence is enormous. It's resentment that builds up slowly. It's needs that never get met. It's a life where you are permanently in second place to everyone else's comfort. There's a concept in psychology called the fawn response. It's actually the fourth stress response, alongside fight, flight, and freeze, and it was identified by therapist Pete Walker. The fawn response is when you manage threat by placating, appeasing, and making yourself agreeable. It's what happens when fighting or running isn't an option, like when you're a child, and the threat is the very person you need to survive. So you make yourself palatable instead. And if you grew up having to fawn, you're probably still fawning. And it's exhausting. I know it is.
Sign number 4. You are an expert at reading other people's moods. Like, uncomfortably good at it. You walk into a room and within 30 seconds, you know exactly what energy everyone is bringing. You can tell when your partner is slightly off before they've said a single word. You pick up on the tiniest shifts in someone's tone and immediately start running calculations in your head. Did I do something? Are they angry at me? What do I need to do to fix this? From the outside, people might tell you you're empathetic. And yes, you might genuinely be empathetic. But this, what I'm describing, this is something different. This is hypervigilance. This is your nervous system constantly scanning for threat because it learned a long time ago that not scanning could be dangerous. Think about it this way. If you grew up with a parent who was unpredictable, happy one minute, explosive the next, or just emotionally absent in ways that were hard to predict, you would have had to become very good, very fast at reading that parent's moods, because your sense of safety depended on it. If you could tell that mom was in a bad mood before she exploded, you could make yourself invisible. If you could sense that dad was disappointed, you could do something to fix it before it became a problem. Reading the room wasn't a skill you developed for fun. It was survival.
Dr. Bessel Kolk, who literally wrote the book on trauma, and the book is called The Body Keeps the Score. If you haven't read it, it's extraordinary. He describes how children who experience emotional neglect develop what he calls a finely tuned threat detection system. Their amygdala, the brain's alarm center, basically runs on high alert all the time, always scanning, always watching, always ready. And the cruel irony of this is that the very skill that kept you safe as a child can make adult relationships incredibly exhausting because you're never fully relaxed. You're always watching, always waiting for the other shoe to drop, always bracing for something to go wrong, even when everything is fine. And when everything is fine, you sometimes can't fully trust it because fine was never safe before.
Sign number 5. Deep down, underneath everything, you believe you are fundamentally too much or not enough, sometimes both at the same time, which is its own special kind of torture. Too needy, too sensitive, too emotional, too intense, not smart enough, not attractive enough, not successful enough, not worthy enough. Just not quite right. Like there's some basic, essential version of you that is slightly but permanently off. I want to share something with you that I think about a lot. There's a psychologist named Dr. Donald Winnicott. He worked in the mid-20th century, but his ideas are as relevant now as they've ever been. And he talked about something he called the mirror role of the mother. The idea is that when a baby looks at their mother's face, what they see is a reflection of themselves. When the mother's face lights up with joy and delight, the baby gets the message. I am delightful. I am good. My existence brings joy. But what happens when the mother's face is consistently preoccupied, or anxious, or blank? The baby doesn't think, my mother has her own struggles and is doing the best she can. The baby thinks, not in words, but in the deep, wordless language of the nervous system. This is what I am.
this blankness, this heaviness. This is my reflection. This is me. And that belief, that wordless pre-verbal belief about your own worth and lovability, it doesn't just go away when you grow up. It goes underground. It becomes the operating system that everything else runs on top of. So you chase achievement to prove you're enough. Or you stay in relationships where you're treated badly because some part of you believes you deserve exactly that. Or you work yourself into the ground trying to earn the love and approval that should have just been given to you freely, because that's what unconditional love means. Unconditional. A study from the journal Child Development found that children who experience emotional neglect, not abuse, just neglect, just the absence of warmth and attunement, show significantly higher rates of shame-based self-concept in adulthood. Not guilt, shame. There's an important difference. Guilt says, I did something bad. Shame says, I am bad. And shame is so much harder to shake because it's not about behavior. It's about identity. It's about who you believe you are at your core.
Sign number 6. You find it almost impossible to actually receive love. Not just to be loved, to receive it, to let it in. Someone gives you a compliment and you immediately deflect, minimize, or find a reason why they're wrong. Someone does something kind for you and you feel uncomfortable, almost suspicious. What do they want? What will they expect in return? Someone tells you they love you, and instead of warmth, you feel this strange anxiety, like it's only a matter of time before they realize they've made a mistake. Let me tell you about a couple. Completely real situation. Details changed. There was a man, call him James, who married a genuinely wonderful woman. She was warm, expressive, affectionate, and she loved him, really, really loved him. And he knew that. But every time she showed him love, he felt this weird urge to pull back. He'd pick fights for no reason right when things were going well. He'd find something wrong with her. He'd sabotage moments of closeness in ways he couldn't explain, and sometimes couldn't even control. It nearly ended their marriage before he figured out what was happening. James had grown up with a mother who could be incredibly loving, but who would also, without warning, become cold and withholding. Love in his house was unpredictable. It came and went. It was there one day and gone the next. And little James's nervous system learned something very specific from that experience. Closeness is dangerous. Not because it's bad, but because it sets you up for a fall. If you let yourself need someone, if you let yourself rely on love, then when it disappears, and it will disappear, because that's what love does, you will be devastated. So the safest thing, the only rational thing, given everything he'd experienced, was to not let love in too deeply, to always keep a little distance, to be the one who pulls back first, before someone else can pull away from you. Psychologists call this avoidant attachment, and research by Dr. Mary Ainsworth, whose work on attachment theory is genuinely foundational to how we understand human relationships, shows that avoidant attachment typically develops in children whose caregivers were consistently unresponsive to their emotional needs. The child learns to deactivate their attachment system, to stop reaching for connection, because reaching has never reliably resulted in being held. And if that's you, if you find yourself pushing love away or feeling more comfortable in relationships where there's emotional distance, please hear me when I say this. That's not who you are. That's what you learned. And what was learned can be unlearned. Not easily, not quickly, but genuinely, truly unlearned.
Sign number 7. And this is the one I want to spend a little extra time on, because I think it's the most painful and the least talked about. You grieve things you never had. There are moments, sometimes out of nowhere, when you see a father pick up his daughter and spin her around laughing, or you see a mother hugging her teenage son like she genuinely just enjoys him, and something inside you just breaks a little. Not because you're jealous exactly, but because you're suddenly aware of an absence, of something that was supposed to be there
and wasn't. Of something you didn't even know you needed until you saw someone else have it. You might grieve around holidays, around other people's families. You might grieve when you have your own children and see how natural it is to love them, and find yourself thinking, why wasn't it like this for me? Why wasn't I enough to bring this out in my own parents? That grief is real. Please don't dismiss it. There is a theory in psychology called ambiguous loss, developed by Dr. Pauline Boss, and it describes the particular pain of grieving something that was never clearly there to begin with. It's different from grieving a death, where there's a clear before and after. Ambiguous loss is grieving a relationship that existed, but was somehow also absent. Grieving a parent who was physically present, but emotionally nowhere to be found. Grieving a childhood that looked fine from the outside, but felt hollow from the inside. And the thing about ambiguous loss is that it's incredibly hard to process, because there's no clear event, no clear ending. People don't set cards for it. There are no rituals. Society doesn't really have a language for, I'm grieving the warmth I never received from a parent who is still alive. But the grief is there, and it deserves to be honored. Not carried forever, but honored, witnessed, given space.
Okay, so if you've been sitting here nodding along, maybe nodding a little more than you expected, I want to first say, I see you. Whatever you're feeling right now, it makes complete sense. And I want to be very clear about something before we go further. None of this is your fault. I'll say it again because I think you might need to hear it more than once. None of this is your fault. You were a child. You needed love and attunement and safety and warmth, the way you needed food and water and air. Because neurologically, emotionally, developmentally, that's exactly what you needed. It wasn't optional. It wasn't a luxury. And if you didn't get it, that is not a reflection of your worth. It is a reflection of what your caregivers were capable of giving. And the reasons they weren't capable are their story, not yours. But here's where I also want to be honest with you, in the way a real friend would be honest. The fact that it's not your fault does not mean it's not your responsibility to heal. Because here's what happens if you don't. The patterns I've been describing, the apologizing, the people-pleasing, the inability to receive love, the hypervigilance, the shame, they don't just affect you. They ripple out into your relationships, into your parenting, if you're a parent, into the way you show up at work, with friends, in the world. The wound doesn't stay contained. So let's talk about healing. Genuinely. Not in a buy this course and you'll be fixed in 30 days kind of way, but in a real, human, this is actually how it works kind of way. The first thing, and therapists and researchers pretty much universally agree on this, is that healing requires witnessing. It requires someone or something to help you acknowledge that what happened was real, was significant, mattered. Because one of the cruelest things about emotional neglect is that it's invisible. You can't point to it the way you can point to other wounds. There's no incident, often. Just an accumulation of absences. An accumulation of moments where you reached and no one reached back. And because it's invisible, we often minimize it. We tell ourselves we're being dramatic. We think, well, my parents didn't hit me, it could have been worse. And maybe that's true. But hurt is not a competition. And the absence of violence is not the same as the presence of love. You needed to be seen. You needed to be delighted in. You needed someone to look at you, just you, exactly as you were, and communicate clearly and consistently. You are enough. You are loved. You are wanted here. And if you didn't get that, the healing often involves, in some way, getting it now. Which sounds strange. You can't go back and fix your childhood.
You can't make your parents into different people. But you can. And this is what inner child work is really about. You can become the loving witness for yourself that you needed back then.
There's a practice in therapy called reparenting, and the name is a little bit confronting, I know, but stay with me. The idea is that you learn to give yourself as an adult what you needed as a child. You learn to check in with yourself the way an attentive parent checks in with a child. You learn to comfort yourself when you're scared, to celebrate yourself when you succeed, to be gentle with yourself when you fail, to tell yourself in the moments when the old shame comes rushing up, I know this feels real, but you are not too much. You are not enough. You are okay. You are loved. I'm here. It sounds simple. It is anything but. It's one of the most difficult and most transformative things a human being can do. Dr. Kristin Neff, whose research on self-compassion at the University of Texas is some of the most important psychological research of the last 20 years, has shown consistently that self-compassion, treating yourself with the same kindness you would offer a good friend, is directly correlated with lower anxiety, lower depression, more stable relationships, greater resilience, and a stronger sense of identity. Not self-esteem, self-compassion. There's a difference. Self-esteem is about evaluating yourself. Self-compassion is about being kind to yourself, regardless of the evaluation.
And here's the thing that really got me when I first learned about her work. She found that people who grew up with harsh, critical parenting tend to have the most difficulty with self-compassion. Not because they need it less, but because the critical voice inside their head is so automatic, so ingrained, so much a part of how they experience themselves that self-compassion feels foreign, unsafe, even arrogant. If that's you, if being kind to yourself feels genuinely uncomfortable or even wrong, that's information. That's your inner critic doing what it was trained to do. And you can train it differently. Now, therapy. I want to be real about this. Not everyone has access to therapy. It's expensive, it's hard to navigate, there are barriers. I know this. But if you can access it, if there is any way, specifically trauma-informed therapy, or approaches like EMDR, or somatic therapy, or internal family systems therapy, these approaches have genuinely significant evidence behind them for healing exactly the kinds of wounds we've been talking about today. They work at the level where the wound actually lives, in the body, in the nervous system, not just at the level of thoughts and understanding. Because here's the thing, you can understand all of this. You can understand everything I've just told you. You can nod along and recognize every single pattern and know exactly where it came from, and still feel exactly the same in your body when the trigger hits. Understanding is necessary. It's a starting point, but it's not the whole journey. The whole journey involves feeling things, sitting with the grief, letting yourself be angry. Because if you're not angry at all, you might still be protecting the people who hurt you. Letting yourself be sad. Letting yourself finally acknowledge that was real. It happened. I deserved better. And I am going to build something better now. There's something I want to leave you with. It's something that a therapist named John Bowlby, one of the founders of attachment theory, said, and it has always stayed with me. He said that the healthy development of any human being requires a secure base, a place of safety and warmth from which to go out and explore the world, and to which you can return when you're scared or hurt or overwhelmed. If you didn't have that as a child, you spent your whole childhood exploring a world that felt fundamentally unsafe, with no secure place to return to. That's exhausting. That's terrifying. And it shapes everything. But here's what I want you to hear. You can build that secure base now. Not by going back, but by going forward. Through the relationships you choose, the boundaries you learn to set, the inner voice you slowly
painstakingly, lovingly retrain. Through the moments when you let someone love you and you let yourself receive it. Through the moments when you catch yourself apologizing for existing and you pause and you think, actually, no, I'm allowed to be here. You are allowed to be here. Maya, the friend I told you about at the beginning, sitting on the kitchen floor, she's been in therapy for about 2 years now. And she said something to me recently that I keep thinking about. She said, I'm starting to like myself. Not love, not yet, but like. And that feels like everything. And it is. It really, really is.
That's where healing starts. Not with grand revelations or perfect moments of transformation, but with small, quiet moments of choosing yourself, of noticing the old pattern and pausing, of sitting with discomfort instead of running from it, of letting someone be kind to you, and instead of deflecting, just saying thank you and meaning it. That's the work, and it is work. But you have been working so much harder than this your whole life, working to stay invisible, to keep everyone else comfortable, to manage everyone else's emotions while yours went unattended. This work, the healing work, is at least working towards something, toward a version of yourself that feels at home in their own life, at home in their own body, at home in their own worth. And you deserve that, not because you've earned it, not because you've fixed everything, but because you're human, because you're here, because you always deserved it, even when no one showed you that you did.
Hey, if something I said today touched something in you, if you recognized yourself in any of this, if you felt something shift even a little, I want you to know that you're not alone in that. There are so many people watching this right now who felt exactly what you felt. And we're all, in our own ways, figuring out how to carry the past a little more lightly. If this helped you, even a little, please consider subscribing. Not for the numbers, but because we're going to keep having these conversations. Real ones, the kind that actually matter. The kind that nobody else is quite willing to have, about the invisible wounds that shape our lives, about how we heal them, about how we build lives that feel genuinely, deeply, sustainably good, not just on the surface, but all the way down. You deserve to feel good all the way down. I'll see you in the next one.